Rain whispered against the windows of the Government Operations Center. Inside, under the sterile glow of blue monitors, Agent Lila Hart stood motionless, eyes fixed on the profile of her next target. Elias Cross, 34, CEO of Helios Global Technologies, a multinational known for cybersecurity innovations and discreet government contracts. Her superior, Director Monroe, circled her like a hawk assessing its prey. Cross's company has been compromised, he said. Sensitive data leaks point to someone inside Helios, but our intel suggests he may be the one orchestrating them. Lila frowned. Elias Cross is clean. Every record says so. Monroe's tone sharpened. Then find out. You'll go in undercover. New identity. Full immersion. Helios just opened an executive assistant position under him. You'll take it. Her stomach tightened. You want me to spy on him from his own office? You're the best at what you do, Agent Hart, Monroe replied. And Cross is clever. You'll need to be convincing. If he's innocent, fine. But if he's our leak, stop him. Lila exhaled slowly. And if I find out he isn't guilty? Monroe's gaze hardened. Then he's still dangerous. Remember your duty. 2 days later, Lila walked into the marble atrium of Helios Global, heels echoing against the polished floor. She wore a calm smile, the kind perfected by those who hide more than they reveal. Every move, every glance, every detail had been rehearsed. Clara Davis, executive assistant, degree from Yale, background in logistics. Her alias fit perfectly. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, and there he was. Elias Cross. He stood by the panoramic windows, tall, precise, commanding without effort. A tailored black suit, watch gleaming faintly in the light. He turned when she entered. Sharp eyes, intelligent and assessing. The kind that made lies difficult to maintain. You must be Clara, he said, extending a hand. His voice was smooth but carried weight. I like punctuality. That's a good start. She smiled professionally, shaking his hand. Thank you, Mr. Cross. I'm ready to begin. His gaze lingered for a moment too long, as if searching for something behind her calm demeanor. Then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. I suspect you are. He gestured for her to follow him into his office. An elegant space overlooking the city. Screens displayed encrypted code, financial graphs, and a secure network feed. You'll manage my schedule, handle confidential correspondence, and liaise with internal security, he said. We deal with sensitive material, so discretion is non-negotiable. Lila nodded, concealing the irony. Discretion was her specialty. As the day progressed, she worked with quiet precision, organizing meetings, compiling reports, and subtly observing everything. Elias moved through his world with flawless control, yet something about him didn't match the profile of a criminal. He was direct, methodical, and strangely sincere. Late afternoon, he paused by her desk. You adapt quickly, he said, studying her expression. Occupational habit, she replied lightly. He tilted his head. Interesting choice of words. You sound like someone used to adapting, maybe even hiding. The remark caught her off guard. For a brief second, she froze. But then she smiled faintly. Or maybe I just read too many thrillers. His eyes glinted with amusement. Somehow I doubt that. The elevator chimed. Another meeting called him away. As he left, Lila exhaled slowly, heart steadying. It had only been 1 day, and already, she knew this mission would test her in ways no operation had before. Because Elias Cross wasn't just intelligent. He was intuitive. And if he kept looking at her that way, she might not be the only one uncovering secrets. 3 weeks. That's how long Agent Lila Hart had been inside Helios Global. 3 weeks of meticulous observation, coded reports sent to her handlers, and careful avoidance of the one man who seemed to see too much. Elias Cross was unlike any executive she'd ever shadowed. He was a strategist, not a showman. Every move calculated, every decision deliberate. And yet, when he smiled, on those rare occasions, it wasn't rehearsed. It was genuine. Dangerous, even in how easily it disarmed her. That morning, Lila was reviewing access logs on the internal security terminal, her fingers moving with practiced ease. Somewhere in Helios's encrypted network, Fragments of sensitive data had been copied and redirected. The trail was faint. Too faint for an amateur leak. Whoever was behind it knew the system intimately. She was so focused she didn't notice him approach. "Working on something interesting, Ms. Davis?" Lila froze for a heartbeat. Then she turned, schooling her features into calm professionalism. "Just reviewing yesterday's reports, Mr. Cross." Elias leaned against her desk, eyes scanning the screen. "That's IT access data, not admin reports." Caught. But her expression didn't waver. "I thought it might be useful to track where the bottlenecks are in the workflow." His gaze lingered on her. Unreadable. "You have initiative. Most assistants don't venture into our server logs." "Maybe I'm not like most assistants," she replied lightly. His lips curved faintly. "No, you're not." He turned away, returning to his office. Lila exhaled silently, her pulse steadying. That was too close. Later that day, a company-wide briefing filled the main conference room. Elias stood at the front, commanding the space without effort. "As most of you know," he began, "Helios prides itself on integrity. But someone inside our walls has been leaking classified client data." A ripple of unease spread through the room. Lila stayed composed, but her stomach twisted. He was addressing the very thing she'd been sent to uncover, and yet, he wasn't the orchestrator. His tone carried real frustration, even betrayal. "I've authorized a full internal audit," he continued. "Everyone's access points will be reviewed, including my own. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." He glanced toward her, just for a second. But the weight of that look lingered, as if he knew she was hiding everything. After the meeting, Lila returned to her desk. A small envelope sat atop her keyboard. No one had seen who left it. Inside was a single note. "You're not the only one watching." Her chest tightened. Someone within Helios knew she was an infiltrator. That night, long after most employees had gone home, Elias's office lights still glowed across the glass floor. Lila lingered outside, debating whether to leave the building or check his activity logs. Before she could decide, his voice came from behind her. "Still here." She turned. Elias was standing by the doorway, jacket off, tie loosened. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man carrying too much on his shoulders. "I was just finishing up," she said carefully. He gestured toward the office. "Come in for a minute. I could use a second opinion." Inside, screens displayed intricate coding lines and security readouts. Elias rubbed his temple. "Our system shows an unauthorized breach, but whoever did it covered their tracks well." He glanced at her. "You have a sharp mind, Clara. What do you see?" She leaned over the desk, pretending to study the lines of code, though what caught her attention wasn't the data, but his quiet intensity. The world saw Elias Cross as cold and unfeeling. But up close, she saw the truth. He cared. He was angry not at the breach, but at the betrayal. "There's a pattern," she murmured. "See those repeated data pings? Someone's testing your firewall, probing for weaknesses before making a real move." Elias looked at her, impressed. "You have a background in IT?" She hesitated, then improvised smoothly. "I took a few courses in college." Curiosity stuck. He smiled, faint but genuine. "Then I'm glad I hired you." Their eyes met, and for a long moment, the tension between them changed. No longer the wary observation of two professionals, but the silent pull of two people trying not to cross a line. Elias broke the moment first. "You should head home," he said softly. "You've done enough tonight." Lila nodded, turning to leave. But before she reached the door he added quietly, "Clara, whatever's going on here, be careful. There's more happening inside Helios than you know." She paused, heart catching at the warning. If only he knew how right he was. The next morning, sunlight spilled through Helios Global's glass atrium. But inside Lila felt anything but bright. The note, "You're not the only one watching," still burned in her pocket. Whoever left it had access, precision, and timing. That meant someone inside the company knew she wasn't just Clara Davis. And yet, she couldn't show it. She sat at her desk, poised and focused, her expression calm as she prepared Elias Cross's briefing materials. But her thoughts were a battlefield. Across the office, Elias was speaking quietly to his security chief, Mason Reed, a broad-shouldered man with an ex-military stance and a distrustful gaze that seemed to linger on her a little too long. When Elias dismissed him, Mason's eyes flicked to her again, an almost imperceptible nod, like a silent warning. Lila's pulse quickened. He suspects something. Later that afternoon, she returned to the network terminal. If someone inside Helios was watching her, she needed to know who. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, accessing encrypted traffic logs. That's when she saw it, a string of pings bouncing between internal servers, data packets disguised as maintenance checks, but embedded with coded markers. Someone was sending hidden messages through the network. And one of the sender tags was hers. Her chest tightened. "That's not possible," she whispered. She hadn't sent anything unauthorized since the mission began. But the logs told a different story. Her ID badge, her workstation, her account. Someone was framing her. Before she could dive deeper, a voice broke through her thoughts. Something wrong. She turned sharply. Elias stood just a few feet behind her, holding 2 cups of coffee. Her heart skipped. How long had he been there? "Just a systems check," she said quickly. "Making sure everything's running smoothly." He set a cup beside her. "I thought you might need caffeine. You look intense." She allowed a small smile. "Occupational hazard." Elias studied her for a long moment, his gaze calm but probing. "You've been working late. I notice things like that." Lila raised an eyebrow. "You notice everything, don't you?" "I have to," he said quietly. "In this business, the moment you stop noticing, someone uses it against you." There was something in his tone, a quiet edge of experience, not paranoia. He'd been betrayed before. "Is that why you don't trust people easily?" she asked softly, surprising herself with the question. He looked at her then, eyes dark but sincere. "Trust is expensive. And I've learned to pay in small amounts." The silence between them felt heavier than it should have. Not hostile, but charged. He looked down at the floor, then back at her. "But you're different. I can't decide if that's a good thing or not." Lila's throat tightened. "Maybe it's both." Before the moment could deepen, the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Cross, urgent call on line 2. It's Director Chen from Defense." Elias nodded and turned away. Lila exhaled, gripping the edge of her desk. She'd walked right into danger. Not the kind that came with guns or encrypted files, but the kind that came with feelings she wasn't supposed to have. That evening, Helios's top floor was quiet again. Lila stayed late, pretending to finish reports. In truth, she was tracing the phantom data linked to her account. A new alert blinked on her screen, an incoming file transfer, labeled Helios, confidential. She clicked it open. Inside was a single line of text. "He's not who you think he is." Her breath caught. Was this a warning? Or bait? Footsteps echoed down the corridor. She closed the file instantly, switching to a blank spreadsheet just as Elias appeared in the doorway. "You're still here," he said, surprised. "Again." "Just finishing up." He leaned against the doorframe. "You don't have to prove yourself to me, Clara. You've already done that." Her stomach twisted. If only he knew how much she was proving. Just not to him. He stepped closer, his tone softening. "You can tell a lot about people by how they work under pressure. You don't flinch. You don't make excuses. You just endure." She forced a calm smile. "That's one way to survive." Elias hesitated, as if weighing something. Then he said, "Mason doesn't trust you." Lila's breath froze. "What?" "He thinks you're hiding something," Elias said quietly. "But I told him he's wrong." Their eyes met. And in that instant, her resolve nearly cracked. He trusted her, or wanted to. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because she was lying to him. Every single day. And yet when he smiled, small, tired, and real, she couldn't help but think. Maybe, just maybe, I don't want to be his enemy. The alarm shattered the quiet of night. A piercing, digital siren echoed through Helios Global's upper floors, red warning lights flashing across the glass corridors. Lila's heart lurched as she sprinted toward the control hub, her heels striking the polished floor in sharp rhythm. The building's security feed displayed chaos. Encrypted data streams flashing red. System alerts multiplying by the second. Elias was already there when she arrived. Shirt sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, tension etched across his usually composed features. "Main server's been breached," he said, eyes locked on the screen. "Firewall bypassed from inside the network." Lila forced her breathing to steady. "Inside access means an employee. How deep is it?" "Deep enough to reach client defense files," he said grimly. "We've sealed external outputs, but whoever's doing this is fast." She stepped beside him, fingers flying over the console. "I can trace the live session. There's a shadow user running commands under a mirrored identity." Elias shot her a look of surprise. "How do you even know how to do that?" She hesitated, then shrugged smoothly. "IT curiosity, remember?" He almost smiled. "Even now. Remind me never to underestimate curiosity." But beneath the faint humor was tension, the kind that crackled like electricity. They worked side by side, the glow of multiple monitors lighting their faces in shifting blue tones. Lila tracked the rogue data packets, tracing them through internal nodes. "There," she said, pointing to a line of code. "They're routing through the lower archive servers, sub-level C." Elias moved instantly, grabbing his access badge. "Let's move." The elevator hummed down, each passing floor deepening the silence between them. Lila could hear the faint echo of her pulse. Elias's reflection in the elevator glass looked calm, but his jaw was tight, focused, calculating. When the doors opened, cold air greeted them. The archive floor was dim, illuminated by emergency lights. Rows of servers stretched endlessly, humming like mechanical heartbeats. They moved cautiously, Elias in front. "The breach originated here," he whispered. "Stay behind me." Lila almost smiled at the irony. "Protecting me, Mr. Cross? You have no idea who really needs protecting." They rounded a corner, and froze. A figure in a Helio security uniform stood at a terminal, fingers typing rapidly. The monitor reflected their face. Mason Reed. Elias's breath caught. "Mason." The security chief turned, eyes dark, expression unrepentant. "Elias. You shouldn't have come down here." Elias stepped forward. "You're the leak." Mason's voice was cold. "No. I'm the survivor. You think Helio stays clean without getting its hands dirty? You built this empire on defense contracts and secrets. I'm just cashing in." Lila's hand moved toward her concealed holster out of instinct, but she caught herself. Clara Davis wouldn't have a weapon. Elias's tone hardened. "You're selling data to foreign bidders. You'll destroy everything we've built." Mason smirked. "Correction. You built it. I just learned how to profit from your blind spots." He reached for the enter key. Lila acted first, grabbing a nearby cable and yanking it free. The monitors went black. Mason turned, furious. "You," he snapped. "You've been snooping since day one." He lunged at her. Elias intercepted, the two men colliding in a brutal scuffle. The impact sent a chair crashing over. Lila grabbed a fallen baton, swinging it toward Mason's wrist. The weapon clattered to the floor. Elias seized the moment, pinning him down. Security backup arrived seconds later. Too late to stop the chaos but in time to drag Mason away in cuffs. The aftermath was quiet. Only the hum of servers filled the air. Lila stood breathing hard, adrenaline still coursing through her. Elias straightened, his expression a storm of anger and disbelief. "I trusted him." Lila's voice softened. "He knew your systems, your habits. He used that against you." Elias turned toward her, eyes searching hers. "And what about you, Clara? How much do you know about me?" Her pulse jumped. The question was too close, too direct. "Enough," she said carefully. "Enough to help, or to hurt." The silence between them burned. Then finally he exhaled, looking away. "You saved the company tonight. Whatever secrets you're hiding, I'll overlook them for now." She swallowed hard. "That's very trusting of you." He smiled faintly, but his gaze stayed sharp. "It's not trust. It's instinct." They stood there a moment longer, surrounded by the hum of machines and the faint buzz of fluorescent light. Then Elias said quietly, Let's get out of here. As they rode the elevator back up, Lila glanced at him, his jaw set, his hands still faintly bruised from the fight. She wanted to tell him everything. That she was never just an assistant. That she was here to watch him, not save him. But when he looked at her, exhausted and sincere, the words stayed trapped in her throat. Because somewhere between duty and deception, her mission had changed. And maybe, just maybe, so had she. Helios Global was silent the next morning. Too silent. The usual hum of voices and phones had been replaced by whispers. Everyone knew about Mason Reed's arrest. What they didn't know was why their CEO had spent half the night in a secured archive with his assistant. Lila felt the weight of that rumor with every glance that followed her through the halls. But what unsettled her more was Elias's silence. He hadn't said a word since their return from the sublevel. Not a text, not a call. Just the sound of his office door closing behind him. Now, sitting at her desk, she reread her last encrypted message draft to her handler. Subject: Operation Helios. Update: Internal saboteur identified, Mason Reed. Target's innocence probable. Compromised cover imminent. Request extraction. But her thumb hovered over send. She couldn't do it. Extraction meant disappearing. No explanations. No closure. And somehow, the idea of leaving Elias without a word felt more wrong than the lie that had brought her here. By noon, his assistant badge reader lit up. Elias wanted her inside. Lila took a steadying breath and entered. He was by the window again, the skyline stretched before him, sunlight reflecting in the glass. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled, hands braced against the edge of his desk. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. "Close the door, Clara," he said quietly. She obeyed. He turned then, his eyes finding hers with unsettling precision. "I've had time to think." "About Mason?" she asked carefully. "About you." Her pulse flickered. "Me?" He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You appear in my office out of nowhere. You know things you shouldn't. You handle encrypted data like a professional analyst, not an assistant. And you react to danger, like someone who's seen it before." She forced a soft laugh. "I told you, I'm adaptable." "Adaptable," he repeated, almost amused. "That's one word for it." He circled behind his desk, eyes never leaving her. "When Mason was arrested, I checked security logs. You accessed the sub-level servers before I called you down there." "Why?" Lila's breath hitched. "He knows." Elias sighed. He raised a hand. "Don't lie. Not now." The quiet authority in his voice made the words lodge in her throat. Finally, she exhaled. "I was looking for the breach." "For the company," he pressed, "or for someone else?" The silence was unbearable. Lila looked away, the facade slipping like thin glass. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She hesitated. This was the crossroads every undercover operative dreaded. Reveal the truth and destroy the mission, or lie and destroy herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but low. "I was sent here to investigate. But not you." The agency thought Helios was being used to sell defense intel. "They thought you were involved." He didn't move. Didn't even breathe. "You're a government agent," he said flatly. Lila nodded once. "Yes." For a long time, neither spoke. The air between them seemed to hum, the silence louder than any alarm. When Elias finally spoke, his voice was calm, but cold. "So all this time, every word, every look, was just part of the job?" Her throat tightened. "At first. But it stopped being that a long time ago." He turned away, hands clenched against the desk. "You spied on me." "I protected you," she said sharply. "You were targeted, Elias. Mason would have buried this company. And you with it." He looked back, anger flickering beneath the hurt. "And yet, you couldn't trust me with the truth." Lila's voice softened. "If I had, I wouldn't have been able to do my job. And maybe I wouldn't have seen who you really are." Their eyes met. Two people caught between duty and something far deeper. Finally, Elias spoke again, quieter this time. "So what happens now? You report your findings, vanish into whatever agency you came from, and I pretend you never existed." "I don't know," she admitted. I wasn't supposed to feel this. He exhaled, tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. You and me both. For a moment, neither moved. Then he stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the quiet heat radiating between them. I should fire you, he said softly. Or hand you over to the feds. Then why haven't you? She whispered. He held her gaze, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Because I don't trust anyone right now. Except you. And that scares me more than any breach ever could. Her heart twisted at the confession. The one man she was sent to deceive had just trusted her completely. I'll fix this, she said quietly. All of it. Just give me time. He nodded once. You have until morning. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Lila. The sound of her real name on his lips froze her mid-step. He met her eyes. If you're going to save me, do it honestly this time. The city looked deceptively calm that night. From the rooftop of Helios Tower, Lila could see the glass skyline glowing under the rain, each building shimmering like a lie dressed in light. She stood alone, earpiece buzzing softly with the faint voice of her handler. Agent Carter. Your cover's blown. You're compromised. Extraction is scheduled at 0400 hours. Her jaw tightened. Negative. I can't leave yet. That's not your call. Elias Cross is no longer your assignment. Debrief and disappear. Disappear. 2 weeks ago, she would have obeyed without hesitation. Now the thought of walking away, of leaving him alone in the wreckage of betrayal and half-truths, felt like a wound. Lila turned off her comm. The rain began to fall harder, cold droplets clinging to her lashes as if the sky itself refused to look away. She'd lied, betrayed, risked everything. But she hadn't finished. Whoever was behind the data leaks wasn't Mason Reed. He was just a pawn. Someone else had been pulling the strings from deeper within Helios, someone who'd vanished the moment she left. And Elias. He was still a target. Downstairs, Elias sat in his darkened office, glass in hand, untouched. The amber whiskey caught the faint reflections of lightning streaking the skyline. He hadn't gone home. He hadn't slept. Every conversation with Clara replayed in his mind. Every look, every touch, every word that had meant more than it should have. He wasn't a man easily fooled, but she had gotten past every defense he had. Not through deceit, but through truth wrapped in restraint. He should have been furious. But all he could feel was the hollow ache of something unfinished. When the door opened, he didn't need to look up to know who it was. Couldn't stay away, he said quietly. Lila stepped into the room, drenched from the rain, her eyes shadowed but resolute. I'm not leaving. He set the glass down. Funny. That's exactly what I expected you to say. Elias, listen. Mason wasn't working alone. The breach was part of something bigger. Someone inside your board is selling classified tech designs. His gaze hardened. And you're just now telling me this? I didn't have proof before. Now I do. She slid a data chip across his desk. It's all here. But if I get extracted tonight, the operation ends. They'll close it off, and whoever's behind this will walk free. Elias studied her face, every word, every flicker in her eyes. So you're going rogue? She smiled faintly. Guess you're not the only one who hates following orders. For the first time that night, he almost smiled. Almost. Then his voice dropped. If your people find out you stayed. They will, she said softly. But that's a problem for tomorrow. The storm outside cracked, lightning flooding the room with silver light. Elias rose from his chair, slow and deliberate, the air between them charged with something that had nothing to do with danger. Why are you really here, Lila? He asked, voice low. She hesitated, searching for the words. Because I started this job thinking I could separate duty from emotion. And I can't anymore. His jaw tightened. You're saying that now, when everything's about to implode? Yes, she whispered. Because if I walk away tonight without saying it, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. For a heartbeat, silence stretched. Thick, trembling. The rain against the windows became the only sound in the world. Then Elias took a slow step toward her. Say it, he murmured. Her voice trembled. I fell for you. The words broke something inside both of them, something unspoken but undeniable. He reached up, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "You're either the most reckless agent in the world, or the bravest. Maybe both." For a long moment, they simply stood there, suspended between truth and consequence. His hand lingered near hers, their breath mingling in the dim light. But the moment shattered when the phone on his desk buzzed. A security alert. Elias glanced at the screen, then froze. Motion sensors on the east subbasement. Someone's trying to access the prototype vault. Lila's instincts kicked in immediately. That's where the classified drives are stored. If they get those files, they'll have everything, he finished grimly. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat. Lila followed, adrenaline chasing away everything else. They reached the subbasement in under a minute. The hum of servers filled the narrow corridor, flickering lights reflecting off metal walls. Two masked intruders were already at the vault door, tools in hand. "Step away," Lila shouted, gun raised. The first man turned and fired. The bullet grazed a steel column, sending sparks flying. Elias ducked behind cover as Lila advanced, returning fire with calculated precision. The fight was fast, brutal, shadows, movement, the metallic ring of gunfire. Within seconds, one attacker was down. The other bolted for the exit, but Elias tackled him, slamming him against the wall. Lila ripped off the man's mask, and froze. It was Marcus Vale, Helios's chief financial officer. Elias's eyes darkened. "I trusted you with my company." Marcus sneered. "You trusted the wrong people." Security stormed in seconds later, cuffing Marcus and dragging him away. When the chaos finally settled, Lila turned to Elias. Rainwater still clung to her hair, the glow of red alarm lights painting her face in soft firelight. Elias stared at her, his agent, his betrayer, his protector. "You were right," he said quietly. "The enemy wasn't outside." Lila nodded, chest heaving. "No. It was inside the whole time." They stood there in the half-light, breathing hard, the world narrowing down to the quiet hum of victory, and the uncertain future waiting above ground. Morning came with the faint glow of dawn filtering through Helios Tower's glass walls. The city below was waking up, unaware of the war that had just been fought in its shadows. Lila stood in the CEO's office, arms folded, eyes fixed on the skyline. She'd barely slept. Her badge was deactivated. Her agency phone confiscated. She was officially off the grid. And she knew what that meant. They were coming for her. Elias entered quietly, dressed impeccably as always, though there was a hardness in his expression she hadn't seen before. He handed her a cup of coffee. "Black. No sugar," he said. "The way you always order it when you're pretending not to care about sleep." She smiled faintly. "You've been paying attention." "I pay attention to everything," he replied, leaning against the desk. "Which is why I know you're planning to disappear before they arrive." Lila hesitated. "You think I should stay and let them take me in?" "I think running only makes you look guilty." "I am guilty," she admitted quietly. "I lied to you. I broke protocol. I stayed when I should have left." Elias's voice softened. "You also saved my company. My life. That has to count for something." She shook her head. "Not to them." He studied her for a long moment. "Then let me handle it." Before she could respond, the sound of elevator doors opening echoed through the hall. Heavy footsteps followed. Measured. Official. Lila's instincts tensed instantly. "They're early." Two agents in dark suits entered, flanking a woman with a calm, lethal presence. "Director Monroe." "Agent Carter," Monroe said evenly. "You're a hard woman to track down." Lila straightened. "Director. You disobeyed a direct extraction order. Engaged without authorization. Exposed your identity to a civilian target." Elias cut in sharply. "I'm not a target." Monroe's eyes flicked to him. "You were a suspect. Until recently." Lila's voice was steady. "He's innocent. The real threat was internal. I have proof. Marcus Vale orchestrated the leaks." "We already have the evidence," Monroe said coolly. "Thanks to your little stunt. The problem, Agent Carter, is that you didn't follow orders." Lila clenched her fists. "I couldn't leave knowing the threat was still active." Monroe regarded her for a beat. You don't get to decide what's worth the risk. Elias stepped forward, the authority in his voice cutting through the tension. Then let me decide. The agents shifted uneasily. Monroe raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. He moved beside Lila, his presence solid, protective. Whatever disciplinary action you have planned, make it formal. But it won't change what she did. She stopped a corporate espionage operation that could have destabilized 3 defense contracts and cost hundreds of jobs. You should be giving her a medal, not handcuffs. Monroe's expression didn't change, but her eyes flickered, calculating. You've grown quite attached to your agent, Mr. Cross. Elias didn't flinch. Let's call it gratitude. Monroe turned to Lila. Is that what this is, Agent? Gratitude. Lila's chest tightened. She met Elias's eyes, saw the storm there, the trust she'd broken, and the bond they'd built in spite of it. No, she said softly. It's something else. Monroe exhaled. You've caused enough disruption for one mission. Effective immediately, you're relieved of field duty pending review. Return to headquarters. Lila nodded once. Understood. As the agent stepped closer, Elias caught Monroe's gaze. You can take her, but you're making a mistake. Monroe regarded him coolly. You're a businessman, Mr. Cross. You know mistakes are just calculated losses. Then she nodded to her team. Escort her out. The ride down the elevator was silent. Lila stood between the agents, her reflection in the mirrored walls fractured, like the double life she'd been living. When the doors opened, Elias was already there. He'd taken the service lift, of course. She should have known he wouldn't just let her go. He walked right up to the agents, his expression unreadable. Give us a moment. They hesitated. Lila nodded. It's fine. When they stepped aside, she looked at him, every word she wanted to say caught behind her ribs. You didn't have to get involved, she said quietly. I did, he replied. Because for once, someone cared more about the truth than the rules. Her throat tightened. The truth doesn't always save people. Then I'll make sure it saves you, he said, voice low, steady. She smiled faintly. That's not your job. Neither was falling for an undercover agent, but here we are. The words hit her harder than any order, any reprimand. For a heartbeat, time stilled. Elias, she began. He reached out, brushing her hand lightly, just once. Go. Face whatever comes next. But know this, if they bury your name, I'll make sure they remember what you did. Her voice trembled. You shouldn't make promises like that. He gave her a faint, wry smile. Too late. Monroe's voice echoed from the car waiting at the curb. Agent Carter. Lila stepped back, forcing herself to breathe. She gave Elias one last look, a silent apology, a wordless promise, and turned away. The car door closed. The engine started. Through the tinted glass, she saw him one last time. Standing in the rain, watching her go, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. The city blurred behind her as they drove away. For the first time in her career, Lila Carter didn't know where her orders would lead, or if she'd ever see him again. But deep down, she knew one thing. The mission was over. Her heart was not. 3 weeks had passed. 3 weeks since the extraction. Since the goodbye that had felt too final. The agency hadn't imprisoned her. Not yet. But Lila was effectively grounded, stripped of field access, locked behind a desk at a quiet intelligence outpost outside Washington. A punishment disguised as temporary reassignment. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the room. Reports, codes, endless paperwork, nothing to drown the ache of what she'd left behind. Every night she caught herself opening Helios's encrypted news feeds, searching for Elias's name. Every time, she told herself it was just habit. Duty. Not longing. She lied every time. That morning, as she logged into the agency's secure database, a message blinked across her terminal. Priority alert. Helios Global. Security incident. Status. CEO missing. Possible abduction. Lila froze. Her breath left her in a sharp exhale. The screen blurred for a second before she steadied herself and read the details. Elias Cross had vanished during a private flight from London to Zurich. The jet had landed on schedule, but he wasn't on board. The pilot and crew remembered nothing after takeoff. Drugged, sedated, then released unharmed. A professional job. Precise. Intentional. "Carter," said a voice behind her. Director Monroe stood at her desk, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You've seen the report." Lila rose slowly. "You're assigning me to the case." Monroe's eyes narrowed. "No. You're too close to it." "I'm the only one who knows the players involved," Lila argued. "Marcus Vale's contacts, the Helios board, their defense partners. I've spent months buried in this operation." Monroe shook her head. "Exactly. And that's why you're staying out of it. We can't afford emotional compromises." Lila's voice went cold. "You're saying I'm compromised?" Monroe leaned in slightly. "You were compromised the moment you cared more about Elias Cross than the mission." The words hit hard, sharper than intended. When Monroe turned to leave, Lila's decision crystallized. If the agency wouldn't act, she would. That night, Lila sat alone in her small apartment, laptop open, lights off. The encrypted system she'd sworn never to hack again glowed faintly against her face. It took minutes to locate Helios's internal comm logs. Old habits never died. Then she traced flight data, cross-referenced security files, and found it. A single ping from an offshore logistics hub registered to Valen Dynamics. A shell company Elias's firm had once sued for patent theft. Coordinates: Eastern Europe, near the Carpathian border. She closed the laptop and exhaled. This wasn't agency business anymore. This was personal. Lila packed light, a black duffel, a passport that didn't bear her real name, and a compact sidearm she wasn't supposed to have. She left the apartment before dawn, blending into the fog like a shadow shedding its skin. The compound was remote. An abandoned mining facility turned private airstrip. 2 guards patrolled the gate. Lila watched from the tree line, silent and focused, the rain seeping through her jacket. She moved with practiced precision, taking one guard down with a silent chokehold, the other with a tranquilizer dart. Inside, the air smelled of oil and metal. Crates were stacked high, stamped with corporate seals. Then she heard it. A voice. Muffled. Familiar. She followed it down a corridor to a locked storage room. Through the small glass panel, she saw him. Elias Cross. Tied to a chair, blood on his lip, but alive. Her heart clenched. She picked the lock and slipped inside. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You how?" "Quiet," she whispered, cutting the ropes. "You're heavier than you look." He gave a hoarse chuckle. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," she murmured. Before he could answer, footsteps echoed down the hall. Lila grabbed his arm. "Move." They ducked behind a crate as 3 men entered, armed, scanning the room. "Search the perimeter," one barked in Russian-accented English. "He's not alone." Lila met Elias's eyes and mouthed, "Trust me." She moved first, sliding out, firing twice. 2 down. The third raised his rifle, but Elias lunged, slamming the man into a crate. The weapon clattered across the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Lila turned to him, breathless. "Still think I shouldn't be here?" He managed a half smile. "Remind me to never argue with you again." "Good plan." They slipped out through the maintenance tunnel, emerging into the cold night air. A half-moon glinted above the fog. For a moment, they stood catching their breath. Then Elias looked at her, his voice low. "You defied orders again, didn't you?" She nodded. "You were worth it." His expression softened. "You know this makes you a fugitive." "I've been one since the day I met you," she said. For a second, the world seemed to still. The wind, the rain, the chaos left behind. Then Elias reached out, his hand brushing against hers. "You saved me." "Again." She gave a faint smile. "Maybe next time, try not to need saving." He chuckled softly. "No promises." Their eyes met, unspoken words suspended in the air between them. There was no protocol here, no mission. Just 2 people who'd burned through lies and found something real in the wreckage. A helicopter's distant roar broke the moment. Lila turned, scanning the horizon. "Agency extraction team," she said. "They'll track my signal." Elias frowned. "What happens to you if they do?" She hesitated. Court-martial may be worse. He stepped closer, voice fierce. Then we disappear. Together. Lila's breath caught. That's not your world. Maybe it should be. The helicopter's light swept across them. White, blinding. Elias took her hand. Fingers tightening. Whatever happens next, I'm not losing you again. And for once, she didn't argue. The helicopter's spotlight cut through the fog, chasing them across the open field. Wind tore at Lila's jacket as the blades thundered above, drowning out the world. Elias held her hand as they ran toward the tree line. You said they'd track your signal, he shouted over the roar. They must have followed the extraction beacon, she replied, pulling him toward the shadows. We don't have long before they lock on our coordinates. The light swept across the grass again. For a brief second, Lila saw her reflection in Elias's eyes. Rain-soaked, bruised, but still fighting. Still hers. She dragged him behind a fallen log just as the helicopter began its descent. What's the plan? Elias asked, breathless. Lila scanned the horizon. There's a service tunnel about a quarter-mile east. If we reach it, we can vanish before they land. He gave a dry laugh. You make vanishing sound like a business strategy. It's a survival tactic, she countered. Come on. They moved through the trees, keeping low, the thrum of the helicopter receding behind them. Every instinct in her screamed that they were running out of time. When they finally reached the tunnel, a rusted service shaft half buried in the ground, Lila dropped to one knee, pried the metal hatch open, and motioned him inside. The narrow passage smelled of earth and iron. Water dripped steadily somewhere in the dark. Elias followed close behind, flashlight beams slicing through the gloom. You've done this before, he said quietly. Too many times, she admitted. They walked in silence for several minutes. Then Elias stopped. What happens after this? You can't run forever. Lila paused, her light falling across the damp tunnel wall. No, she said softly. But maybe I can run long enough to make things right. He frowned. You don't owe the agency anything. I'm not talking about them, she said, meeting his eyes. I owe you the truth. All of it. He stepped closer, his voice low. Then tell me. Lila swallowed hard. The operation wasn't just about Helios. Valen Dynamics was being funded by a private intelligence group, one that's been inside the agency for years. Monroe knew. That's why she wanted me out of the field. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting them. Elias's eyes darkened. You're saying your own people are behind this? Yes. And if we go back now, we both disappear. He took a slow breath. Then what's the move? She smiled faintly. We turn the tables. By the time they reached the end of the tunnel, dawn was breaking. Gray lights spilling across the valley. They emerged into the open near an abandoned communications tower. Lila set up a small portable transmitter, connecting a hard drive she'd stolen from the compound. This contains every encrypted transaction Valen made with Helios. When I broadcast this, the data will leak directly to Interpol, not the agency. Elias raised an eyebrow. That's treason. That's justice, she replied. He watched her work, the tension in his shoulders easing as the soft hum of the transmitter filled the air. For the first time in weeks, she looked like herself. Focused, fierce, unstoppable. Signals live, she said. In 30 seconds, every corrupt contact tied to Valen, and to Monroe, will be exposed. He stepped closer. What about you? She looked up. They'll hunt me. Probably forever. And me. They'll assume you helped me. So yes, you're technically a fugitive now too. Elias smiled wryly. I've had worse Mondays. Lila laughed. A small quiet sound that felt foreign after so much chaos. But it didn't last. A voice echoed through the clearing. Agent Carter. Step away from the transmitter. Lila froze. Director Monroe stood at the edge of the field, flanked by 2 armed agents. The helicopter hovered behind them, blades churning the air. Monroe's tone was calm, almost pitying. I warned you, Lila. Walk away now, and I can still make this disappear. Lila raised her chin. So can I. She pressed the final command. The transmitter's light flared green. The data stream went live. Monroe's calm faltered. What did you do? I gave the truth to everyone who deserves it, Lila said. You can't bury this anymore. The agents raised their weapons. Elias stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body. You'll have to go through me first. Monroe sighed. You think I won't? But then, the faint buzz of her earpiece caught Lila's attention. A male voice, tense, urgent, spoke through Monroe's comm. Director, Interpol just confirmed a global data drop. It's over. They're tracing every transaction as we speak. Monroe's composure finally cracked. She turned back to Lila, her expression unreadable. You just made yourself an enemy of every intelligence agency in the world, she said coldly. Lila met her gaze. No. I made myself free. For a long second, no one moved. Then Monroe gave a small bitter smile. You always were too good for this game. She turned to her agents. Stand down. And just like that the danger passed. The helicopter pulled back. The storm broke. Hours later, Lila and Elias sat by the edge of the field, the transmitter silent now, their future uncertain. Elias leaned back against the grass, looking up at the pale morning sky. You really did it. She exhaled slowly. We did it. He looked over at her, his voice softer now. So what happens to us? Lila smiled faintly. You mean, after we're both international fugitives? Yeah, he said with a grin. After that. She tilted her head, studying him. Maybe we disappear. Start over. Find a quiet place where no one knows who we are. He nodded slowly. And what would we be there? She looked at him, eyes warm. Not agent and CEO. Just Lila and Elias. For the first time in what felt like forever, that idea didn't sound impossible. He reached for her hand, fingers intertwining. I could live with that. She smiled. You'd have to. The wind carried the scent of rain and freedom. The past was gone, the lies burned away, and ahead of them stretched a horizon neither of them could predict. But for the first time it was theirs. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.